Hello friends, this is Worm, back today with another episode of What If Wednesday, the Weird Wacky Wild series, where we talk about weird wacky wild what ifs of Destiny 2. That was a difficult intro to record. And today, what if Bungie had a Horde mode in Destiny 2? I want to precurse this video by number one saying go hit the sub button, go follow my Twitter, but also this is not like my idea. Like this idea of a Horde mode in Destiny 2 has been around since basically Destiny 1. And over the years, like, we've got things that are close to Horde modes, you know, Prison of Elders, for example, a couple of the seasonal activities, Battlegrounds, kind of, but nothing has ever been a tried and true Horde mode inside of Destiny 2. And I really think that it would be cool if we finally got one. Of course, in today's video, I want to talk about what it would look like, you know, maybe some of the rewards, maybe some of the structure of it and stuff like that. But I think first and foremost, the most important thing we need to think about when thinking of a Horde mode in Destiny 2 is the player size. Because currently we have a variety of different player sizes. We have solo stuff like Lost Sectors. We have 3-man activities such as dungeons, strikes, you know, some other stuff like that. We've got 4-man Gambit, we've got 6-man, which is raids. Technically, you could say 12-man for Crucible, but like, well, I'm not going to include that in here. But you know, the biggest PvE activity goes up to 6 people, and of course, that is a raid. But what size would a Horde mode be? Would it be a 3? Would it be a 6? Would it be a 4? I don't really know. I think the most optimal choice that Bungie could go with is just stick with the standard 3 Guardian combo. I think that 4 is throwing in a little bit of an oddball there. You know, you're going to have 2 of the, well, and you have potential to have 2 of the same classes. Currently, I think the reason why they've structured 3-person activities is because technically, if you, in a perfect world, you could settle it with 1 character from each class. But I think with 4, it's just kind of throwing in just a really weird number. Any more than 4, like, you could make an argument for 4, but any more than 4, and I think that your density might be potentially too low. So I think a 3-person activity, a Horde mode activity, is that perfect number for a Horde mode activity. And of course, the second most important thing to consider is where on earth would a Horde mode actually take place. So most activities that we have in Destiny 2, they take place in existing locations. The one exception I would say is probably raids, dungeons, and seasonal activities. They take place kind of in their own little areas. But when you have when you bring up the idea of a Horde mode, I feel like there are some locations that exist in Destiny 2 that could work as a potential Horde mode arena, so to speak. And I think that there's also a need for some new ones. So some of the existing areas I think could potentially work well for a Horde mode. In Warlord's Ruin, the Tempest encounter, you could potentially make that into a really neat Horde mode arena. Like, it's got this really big arena. Sorry, I'm going to use that word a lot, but it's got a really big arena, but you have several spawn locations, and I think that Bungie could even add some more for a Horde mode and have enemies come from like where the castle is, or maybe reverse it. Enemies come from like the walls. They climb up the walls. Your back is towards the like castle entrance, so to speak, and then like you've got to you just kill waves of enemies, prevent them from getting inside the castle, like whatever it is. But I think that would be a pretty decent location. Another location I can think of that would be maybe a good idea would be the Taniks final encounter in Deepstone Crypt. Now, this is one I'm not entirely sure about because it is a really big arena, but it's 360. It's already got tons of spawn locations around the map where enemies can constantly come in at. You could also fit in room for like drop ships, like Cabal drop pods. You could fit in follow-in skiffs to come in and drop enemies off. But those are just a couple of them. I'm sure there's more. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. But those are some of the existing locations I think could be a good place to have a Horde mode be featured at. Now, obviously, I think the better route that Bungie could go would be developing an entirely new arena that is designed specifically with this Horde mode in mind. And I think that this would be a good idea because, number one, it would force them to dedicate you know, a team or something to work on it. Like, obviously, if you just throw it into Warlord's Ruin or the Deepstone Crypt arena, like, yeah, it could be good, but it also feels like just kind of reuse stuff versus if you have a dedicated team that is working on, you know, this activity, that's building its environment. Like, you know, when you build an environment, you're more likely to put love into it. And it's not always the case. I mean, look at Gambit. You know, we have 3 Gambit maps, and Gambit has been basically just untouched for like 4 or 5 years or something at this point, which is ridiculous. But building a new arena would, like I said, number one, it would give them more of a reason to entertain this mode and to build onto this mode. But also, you could custom tailor this arena for specifically a Horde mode. Maybe you have literally like a round arena, you've got some debris in the field, you have doors that enemies come from, blah, blah, blah. Like however you want to set it up, you could use like a similar theme to Prison of Elders, how you have kind of a big room, lots of big bulky stuff around, different levels of, you know, height that you can climb up on and stuff. But building an arena from the ground up would, most importantly, it would give them an opportunity, give Bungie an opportunity to build this encounter with a Horde mode in mind, with enemies coming from all directions, with, you know, bosses spawning in specific locations. You know, there's 4 or 5 locations around the map where a boss can spawn. There is, you know, doorways where enemies can come. There's holes in the ceiling where enemies can drop from. Maybe you can have an open sky so that, you know, Hive tomb ships, fallen skiffs, and Cabal drop pods can come in and drop enemies off and stuff like that. But that's the, you know, that's kind of the location thought. I think that it would be great if they'd, you know, made a new location for a Horde mode. But beyond just the location, we need to talk about enemy density for a Horde mode, and whether or not it will be a perpetual Horde mode or if it's going to be more of a you know, a round based Horde mode where, like, once you get to a final, you know, there's a starting round, there's a final round. Now, as much as I think we'd all like the idea of a perpetual mode where you just get in, kill stuff over and over and over again, get some loot every round, blah, 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 and then hop out whenever you want, I don't think that would work very well in the long run, because it would get boring after a while. I mean, let's be honest, killing ads, as cool as a Horde mode may be, the primary issue with a Horde mode is that if it's not done correctly, it's going to be boring. It's gonna be just another seasonal activity, so to speak. You know, we're at a point where Guardians have so much power that ad clear is not really difficult, I guess is the way I would put it. And we're gonna talk more about that, about Guardian power and stuff in just a second. But in terms of ad density, or I'm sorry, in terms of the round-based situation, I don't think it would work with a just perpetual ongoing onslaught of enemies that just constantly come. Like, maybe they could have a secondary mode that's just like non-stop spawning of enemies, like, and they just come forever. You can go in there, you can farm catalysts or whatever you want to do, but it doesn't give any like rewards, so to speak, because it never ends. It's just constant ads coming at you in high numbers, blah, blah. You can go in there, test builds and stuff like that. A playground, so to speak, would be cool. But I think that a round-based variant of a Horde mode would be good. And of course, how many rounds it would be, I'd kind of leave that up to Bungie. I would say between 7 to 10 decently difficult rounds, but not long rounds. I think that, you know, in a Horde mode, in a proper Horde mode, an entire loop from start to finish should have enough ads that it takes, you know, maybe a minute or 2 to clear each round. And then once you get to the higher rounds, maybe it takes a little bit longer, like 3 or 4 minutes. I'd say the optimal length for a Horde mode with, say, 7 rounds is like 15 to 20 minutes. Any longer, and you have a situation like the coil, where it's like, the coil, like, yes, it's awesome and it's cool, but like, it's kind of just drags on. Like, I don't really like doing the coil all that much, because you know, you get to a point where you're 30 minutes in, it's like, oh, okay, finally we're in the boss room, blah, blah, blah. And I think a Horde mode should be much shorter than that. But in terms of the round-based difficulty, of course, it's important that we tier up the difficulty. The first round can be, you know, just a horde of, say, Thrall. Say your enemy that you're fighting against is the Hive, just a horde of Thrall, and they're coming from all different angles of the arena, and you and your team are just killing them all, and that's it. And then, you know, the next wave gets a little bit more difficult. They throw in some acolytes, and by the third wave, they're throwing in knights. By the fourth wave, you're starting to get some orange bars in there. And then, you know, by the final wave, the 6th and 7th wave, there are bosses being thrown in there at you as well. Maybe even champions. But I don't know how I'd feel about champions in this mode, because it would kind of limit your loadout. And in a Horde mode, you don't want loadout limiters, which we can talk more about that in just a second. But I think that having probably like 7 rounds where it gets increasingly more difficult. Ad density, maybe in the later rounds, it kind of lets up just a little bit, but at no point during a Horde mode, you know, a horde game mode, should you ever feel like you are running out of enemies or that it's slowing down at all. And I think this is where Bungie has kind of struggled in the past, because as a hardcore player, like, there are plenty of activities where I would say there's not enough ads. But of course, as a brand new player, you might say, wow, like, this is perfect, like, I'm getting to kill a lot of stuff, you know, you're playing with other brand new players who don't have optimized builds and stuff like that, which, you know, granted, that's totally fine. But in a horde mode, everybody needs to feel like they're contributing to the team. And that kind of leads me from, you know, talking about rounds and stuff to the, like, kind of setup of the game. If you have a build, if you have somebody who's using a build that's way too strong, then you're going to have a situation where they're going to be taking a majority of the kills, and somebody is not going to be doing as much damage, or they're not going to be killing as much, and they're going to potentially get bored of it. And this is where I think one of the most difficult balancing factors are. Now, I think that the best way that Bungie could potentially balance this out is having arenas kind of divided into threes, and each section where enemies come from needs to have a relatively high density of enemies. That way each person can go to their own little area, kill a bunch of ads, and never have to leave that area. You know, that's where their ad killing is. You know, if they move into the middle, then they can help the middle, but all of a sudden, you know, they've got a ton of ads coming from the right side. So now more firepower is going to have to be put into the right side. Well, that leaves your back kind of open, you know, and stuff like that. But you could potentially still play like a support character, because I know there's a lot of people out there that like to play support, like the idea of support. You could still play support character in a perfectly like balanced arena, perhaps like a triangle shaped arena, you know, where each player has their own little corner where they're being surrounded by enemies, but you could all as a team push into, say, like the middle area or something like that, and basically play King of the Hill, where you all stand on top and just kill everything that's coming at you. Like, I think that would be cool, and I think that would be a good way of balancing it. But, you know, like I said, like, if you have too many enemies weighted towards one side of the arena or towards from one of the doors, like, you're gonna have, you know, that a Titan or a Warlock, you know, using Stormcall or something, just killing all the ads and making it not really fun. And I think another note on ad density, like, I think the waves should not be based on a number of enemies, you know, like 50 Thrall. I think it should be more of a time limit. You're going to have Thrall pour out every half of a second out of this door, out of these 4 doors in your area, for a minute and a half. Every half second, 2 Thrall are going to be coming out at you. That way, you don't have a situation where somebody kills their ads really fast, and so their ads stop spawning, so then they move to the middle, or they move to the left side or right side of the arena and help somebody else kill their ads. Like, everybody has their own balance that they have to do. Then once the timer runs out, that's when you can, as a team, move around the arena, clean up any enemies that are, you know, left over and stuff like that. But that's how I would handle, like, the enemy density and the enemy spawn, so that it doesn't get boring for anybody. The problem, I think, with this is that some players are going to get overwhelmed, and this is one of the reasons why I said, you know, having the ability to move closer to your teammates. You know, if you're say on the left wing of the triangle, you want to move to the center wing of the triangle. All right, you can move to the center wing, then your ads coming from the left will start distributing evenly, you know, to the right and to the middle, or maybe a little bit more weighted towards the middle wherever you are, you know, and that way you can stick close to your teammates, but your teammates can also help you to clear out your ads. Then by the end of the round, you can move back to your area. You know, you've got a better grip on what's going on. You can start killing, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. I think another issue that could come with this is if a player were to die in their little area, that's going to put a lot of pressure on teammates, because now, you know, again, that triangle shape, the person in the middle dies. Now the ads are going to be splitting towards left and right, and somebody from the left or right is going to have to go back to that middle area, which is going to leave the right unguarded. It would really punish players, I think, for having a you know, for dying. And that's a good and a bad thing, because I think that, you know, you should want to survive. And I think that we'll talk about survival again also in just a second, but I think that one of the ways that Bungie could potentially, like, help this, or not, I shouldn't say help this, one of the things is, like, this would be one of the fun factors, like the survival and stuff that you have to have is really high. You need to be using survival based builds, and this is another reason why I said I don't think champions would be necessarily a good idea, because when you're locked into a specific loadout because it has anti-champion capabilities, maybe you can't build into survivability as much as you want. But yeah, that's kind of the idea of ad density, you know, the ad concentration and the team play. But moving on, I did want to talk about dying in this Horde mode. I don't think that there should be a limit on revives. I mean, we've seen what happens in the coil. You know, in the coil, you get that final boss fight. If you're out of revive tokens, you're gonna have one person fighting that final boss, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so I don't think revives would be the answer, but players should feel kind of punished for dying. And I think there's two ways that Bungie could do this. Number one, like they add in some type of a debuff for to a player for dying. So if you die and once you're revived, you are drained of all your abilities or something like that. And yeah, like that's gonna suck. That's not gonna feel good. But at the same time, if Bungie is able to properly weigh out their ads around, you know, the different areas and you're not being swarmed by ads, you should be able to kill them without having excess difficulty. You should be able to have, you know, places where you can get a chance to heal, not like be invincible or safe, so to speak, but you know, there's some height advantages that you can climb up to. You can sit up there for 2 seconds, heal up just a little bit, and then get back into the fray before the enemies climb up the other side of the hill or something like that and come at you. I think that could be something they could do. I think that if you set up the ad spawns and ad density correctly, players are already not going to want to die, because they know that if they die, their teammate is much more likely to die now. And then if that teammate is to die and there's one person left, that's going to be a major struggle on this last person. They're going to have to use their supers and whatever they can to get over to those revives, pick their teammates up and move on. So on and so forth. Of course, I think another issue in a horde-based game mode is if you have these players, like if you have one person left standing and they go to revive somebody and you're just surrounded by tons of enemies, you're getting the left, right, and middle concentration of enemies all on you while you're trying to revive somebody. Like that's going to be difficult, number one. But number two, when your teammate is picked up, what is the likelihood that they are instantly nuked by the amount of enemies that are there? I think that's also like something that could potentially happen. So maybe adding some type of, you know, if you're the last person standing, you have a buff, and when you revive somebody, it blows up and it blinds all the enemies in the area, and it gives you and your allies like an overshield or something like that, an extra overshield, so that your ally that you just picked up can now get to safety and start slaying out ads again. Yeah, but that's the idea of Des. I think that there should be some type of punishment for dying in a horde mode, but it shouldn't be to the point of something like the coil, like where, you know, if you're the last person standing, you know, and you're out of tokens, because tokens are one of, in my opinion, the worst thing that ever happened to Destiny 2. But that's a video for another time. It can be very, it's difficult, but I don't think that running out of tokens should limit you. Remember, when we're thinking of a horde mode, this is not some ultra try-hard mode. Like this is a mode to go in and have fun. High enemy density, high uptime on various abilities and stuff like that. And maybe you could have a regular version and a legend version. And maybe in the legend version, that's when you kind of put limiters on various, you know, abilities and stuff like that. But with that being said, I also think that in terms of abilities and ad killing, there should be some like mid-round rewards for doing well, for having high performance. And this is a common feature in many horde modes. You know, if once you kill X amount of enemies, you get, say, a heavy ammo crate to drop, or you get a booster to your grenade ability that for 20 seconds you get, you know, 500% grenade ability uptime, or maybe Bungie could have permanent buffs that come at the end of each round depending on your performance. Like, okay, if you got the most kills, for example, you get a 500% grenade buff. If you got the second most kills, you get a, you know, 250% grenade buff. And if you got the least amount of kills, you get 100% grenade buff, something like that, just to build up Guardian's powers as the rounds go on. That way, by the time you get to that final round, you're not just kind of bare bones with base level stuff and potentially out of super because you use it on earlier rounds. Like now you have, you know, stuff to actually combat bosses, you know. And like I said, in that last round, that 7th round, so to speak, you know, every player has a boss in their little section of the arena that they have to fight on top of all the ads and stuff that are coming. And so I think having boosters such as that could really be beneficial. Then of course, you could also have maybe some really neat stuff like the ability to call in heavy ammo that's on a you can use it an infinite number of times, but it's on a cooldown. Say it's on like a 5-minute cooldown. So 5 minutes, you know, maybe less than that, maybe like 3-minute cooldown. So every 3 minutes you can call in heavy ammo, and it'll spawn in your little area of the arena. You can pick it up. You're the only one that can pick it up. And once you pick it up, it's gone. Nobody else can pick it up. That way you can kind of, at your own discretion, call in when you want heavy or when you want, you know, various abilities to be recharged. Maybe you could have like a emergency button where every 5 minutes you get the ability to just instantly recharge your super. So, you know, and it's on a hard 5-minute cooldown. There's nothing that can speed it up, but, you know, you use your hunter tether, for example, to tether a bunch of adds because you're getting swarmed. Great. You kill them all, but all of a sudden you're getting swarmed again. You can activate that ability to instantly get your super back. Then it goes on that, again, that like 5-minute cooldown. Use your super, build it up, stuff like that. I think that could be also a really cool idea. But moving on from that, I think it's important that we talk about reward structure. And I think that's, first of all, like the reward structure is already in place if you do a round-based system. At the end of each round, you get X amount of rewards. And as you get higher up in those rounds, so you're finally able to beat the highest tier of round, that's where you get the best rewards. Starting at the low rounds, you might get, you know, a legendary. And I think that actually the coil is one of the perfect ways of doing this. So in the coil, at your lower level completions, you get a random reward. You get a random weapon. Same thing here. You know, if you on your first and second round, you get a random weapon, or you get a random piece of armor. But then on your third and fourth round completions, you get the ability to, you know, focus. Do you want a weapon or an armor piece? Then on your fifth and sixth completion, you get to focus, you know, hey, do you want a specific weapon and a specific arm piece? Like, do you want a fusion rifle or a pulse rifle? Or do you want a pair of boots or a pair of arms, like something like that? And then of course, once you finish that final round, you have access to a whole bunch of loot. You get the ability to choose maybe like 2 weapons of your choice. You get an option to choose 2 armor pieces of your choice that are high stat. Then you get to open some other chests that give out, you know, random rewards, ascendant shards, ascendant alloys, and stuff like that. I think that would be a great system that they could have, balancing that factor. Also, on top of rewards, looking at origin traits and you know, unique unique armor effects. Again, you could have, similar to how we had Gambit Prime, like abilities on your armor pieces. You know, during a horde mode, your instant super cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. You know, so now instead of having to wait 5 minutes, now 4 minutes 50 seconds. Or, you know, you get 10% more heavy ammo in a heavy ammo break. And if you stack multiple pieces of those armor, it builds up. So if you have, you know, 5 pieces of armor and all of them are 10% instant super cooldown reduction, now your super goes from being or 10 seconds, sorry, not 10%. Now your super goes from being a 5-minute cooldown to now like a 4-minute cooldown. Or if you stack all 5 pieces the same, you get an additional bonus. So you stack 5 pieces of armor that give you a 10-second cooldown to your instant ability usage, your instant super ability usage. Now, instead of just getting 50 seconds, you're thrown in just an additional 10 seconds. So now instead of 5 minutes, it's 4 minutes, something like that. Just some kind of armor bonuses. We talked about the armor bonuses in a video a couple days ago, maybe last week, something like that. And then of course, in terms of weapon, the origin trait I think should benefit, you know, the horde mode, but not be something that is unviable outside the horde mode. Maybe, you know, this weapon deals 3% more damage to fallen. This weapon, you know, has a higher chance of dropping heavy or special ammo, just something like that. Something that's going to really benefit players in the horde mode, but it still works outside of the horde mode. But yeah, that's my thoughts on a horde mode. That was a lot longer than I thought. We're at 24 minutes. That's a longer video than I thought. But, you know, there's a lot of fun ideas I have behind a horde mode. I would love to see a horde mode in Destiny where we just get to absolutely slay out. We can use our best ad clearing builds. But again, very importantly, the horde mode is not just about ads. Like in the initial stages, it's about ads, but as it tiers up, there's also bosses thrown into the mix. So you can't put on something like Risk Runner and just go to town for 7 rounds. Like you've got Risk Runner, but then you get up there, you start having orange bars, yellow bars in there, even bosses and stuff like that. But yeah, that's my ideas for a horde mode. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts and ideas on a horde mode, so leave them down in the comment section below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more daily Destiny content, and go follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to post over there more often. With that being said, guys, that's it for me. See y'all next time. Bye for now. Oh yeah, and watch these videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason YouTube thinks you'll like them. Okay guys, for real, bye for now.